Hello, everyone. This is the second week of our summer Bible study, a reader's guide to the book of Daniel. Last week was chapter 1, so of course this week is going to be chapter 2. I hope you had a chance to read through chapter 1. If you didn't, now would be a good time. If you didn't catch the first video last week, now would be a good time. You can always catch up with it later. Chapter 2 is going to be called A Monumental Dream. It is the first dream that Daniel is going to interpret by a king called Nebuchadnezzar. And as usual, these summaries of each chapter are going to be in 10 minutes or less, so it won't take you a lot of time to get kind of the general background, but then you'll be able to read the book of the Bible a little bit easier. Let's get into it. We're going to review just quickly what happened in chapter 1 so that we have a running start into chapter 2. Daniel and his friends, we'll know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when we get to chapter 3. They had been taken into exile to Babylon as very young men. They were probably teenagers, maybe even young teens. And they were taken to Babylon because they were supposed to be some of the best people in the land of Israel. Young men, strong men, good-looking men, men from noble households. And the king of Babylon wants to mold them so that they are now leaders for him in his kingdom, in the empire of Babylon. That's why they're there in the first place. Now, they earned the respect of Nebuchadnezzar, and they were noticed as not just leaders, but young men with some incredible talents, skills, and gifts. And of course, the Lord gives them these skills and gifts, but it also gives them an opportunity to have some leadership positions in the near future with King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. Daniel specifically has been given the special gift of interpreting dreams by the Lord. That's mentioned in chapter 1, even though we don't see it come into play until here in chapter 2. So Daniel, more than any of the other young men in Israel, is kind of raised to this prominent position by the Lord simply because of his skill set that's going to come into play quite a few times. You notice at the very beginning of chapter 2, this story happens just in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. That means Daniel's still a relatively young man, probably still a teenager, we would assume, when this happens. And so keep that in mind as you read through the story. He's not a grown man yet. He's still a teenager, and yet he demonstrates kind of an incredible Christian faith. What I want you to watch for in chapter 2 is this. Nebuchadnezzar, for the first time, demonstrates a very volatile side. He seems to be a little bit crazy, kind of like those Roman emperors that you hear about in the Roman Empire. Well, Nebuchadnezzar comes a long time before that, and he is crazy. He is willing to kill people on a whim just because he can. But at the same time, Daniel reveals a Christian humility that is very commendable, not just for Daniel, of course, but for any of us that we would want to follow his example. Both Nebuchadnezzar's volatility and Daniel's humility are going to come into play in later chapters and in later stories as well. In chapter 2, we have the first prediction of the coming Savior in the book of Daniel. It's kind of a cool one, too, because it comes in the form of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. It's a rock that shatters this monumental statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So watch for that, because this is a prediction of the coming kingdom of Christ. Not a physical kingdom, but a spiritual kingdom through the gospel and then ultimately in heaven. The statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream represents the kingdoms that would rule over the land of Israel for centuries to come. This isn't just a dream. This is an actual historical prediction of what was to come. So the head of gold on this statue that you're going to read about is Nebuchadnezzar. It is the empire of the Babylonians. Next, you have the chest of silver. That represents the combined kingdom of the Medes and Persians. Then you get down to the belly and the thighs. It was made of bronze. That represents the Greek Empire. And finally, the legs of iron, coupled with the feet of iron and clay. That's going to be the Roman Empire. And as you look historically down that list, that's exactly how it happened in the pages of history. Those kingdoms were successive kingdoms that ruled over the land of Israel. And that is what the Lord is always concerned about anyway. He's concerned about his chosen people. And so these dreams in the first 6 chapters of Daniel, and then the visions in the second set of 6 chapters of Daniel, are all revolving around God's people and who rules over them at the time. The main point, God is in control of the future. And one day he would send Jesus to be the ruler over all nations. His kingdom will last forever. Keep that in mind as you read through chapter 2 of the book of Daniel. But what does this have to do with my life? Why should you read chapter 2? Well, the Lord has your future in his hands as well. He knows what it will be and how he will use it for your good thousands of years. We would even say millions of years before it happened. Long before the Lord ever created Adam and Eve, he held your future in his hands. What a wonderful thing to know. Now that you have a little bit of a summary of Daniel chapter 2 in your head, it's time to read it. You have an entire week to read Daniel chapter 2. And as always, if you have questions or comments, do not hesitate to email me at any time, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Happy reading, and Lord bless your study of his word.